What a Saturday afternoon in college basketball, everybody. Field of 68 special edition with Jeff Goodman, coming from what looks like a much more beautiful location than where I'm at getting ready for snow up in New Jersey. We are reacting to Alabama beating Kentucky in a top 8 showdown in the SEC, 102-97. We will react to everything that's happened on this wild Saturday at 11 Eastern time tonight on the Field of 68 After Dark. But we know we got BBN. We know we got Crimson Tide fans. Jeff, you've seen both these teams plenty throughout the season. Alabama beats Kentucky in Lexington. But I got to open with this note for you, Jeff, and I want your raw reaction. Kentucky is now allowing 88.6 points per game in SEC play. What do you think of first this game? And second, what's up with Kentucky's defense?
I mean, it was a fun game. I mean, the two highest scoring teams in the country delivered in that end. It's pleasing to the eye. If you're a Kentucky fan, you go there and you know you're going to see some points scored. But as you said, Fana, the key is going to be in the tournament, how deep can this team go? Because you have to outscore teams. And they've got some good defensive players. That's the scary part, right? Lamont Butler's playing hurt with the ankle, with a shoulder injury, but he's one of the best defenders, on-ball defenders in the country. Amari Williams, pretty good defender. They've got some guys who can guard here. So that's going to be the key, really. If Kentucky's going to do any damage in the tournament, they're going to have to be average defensively. They're not going to be great, but they're going to have to be at least average, because ultimately, while this year has been amazing for Big Blue Nation, because one of their own came home and made them forget about John Calipari. But ultimately, if they go down in the first round again, John Fana, it's kind of all for naught, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's year one, so it wouldn't be to the degree that Cal faced. But I agree with you. It would be what has really ultimately changed? Kentucky fans want to see the March run. And it also does bring up the fact, Jeff, that I think here's my point off the top. You can't overreact to one game in the Southeastern Conference.
Right,
but you can react to trends. What I mean by that is you can't overreact if you're Alabama to the loss to Ole Miss on a night where Alabama shot the ball poorly. Ole Miss defended. They used their experience. Chris Beard's done an amazing job in year two down at Ole Miss. But today, Alabama, you knew they were going to respond. Timing is everything in this league. They hit 13 threes. Grant Nelson goes for 25 and 11. Mark Sears goes for 24 and 9 assists. What I mean, though, is the trend is the concern. And the trend is, why is it a concern? Because, Jeff, you and I both know, let's just say Kentucky gets a 3 or a 4 seed. To the folks who don't know, Big Blue Nation knows it. But you got to know, the 13 or the 14 that you're playing has, one, done a lot to win their conference tournament. 2, probably has enough guard play. You know, a 13 or a 14 has that type of guard play to shoot and to make shots and to be in a game. Defensively, if you're Kentucky, at some point, the rubber's got to meet the road here, because you gave up 100 to Florida. You gave up 102 to Alabama. This is no longer, is it refreshing to watch? Absolutely. But when you struggle to this degree on that end of the floor, you leave yourself susceptible to the big picture item of not being able to make it out of the first weekend of the tournament.
And again, they're better individual defenders than this, especially in the perimeter with Butler and Owe. They should not be allowing. Now, I know it is really hard to stay in front of Mark Sears. Really hard. I mean, Mark Sears, to me, again, I know you look at maybe the shooting numbers and say, like, he had an off game. He was 6 for 17 from the field, 4 for 12 from 3. But, man, that dude can get in the lane whenever he wants. It is really tough to stay in front of him. And when he does, he's such a threat, not only to score, but to drive and kick and make life easier for Grant Nelson, which he did in the first half. And, you know, then LeBaron Fallon makes some plays. He can go downhill too. They're tough. Listen, Alabama, you knew Nate Oates got into them after that home loss the other day. So you knew they were going to come out and play tough, but to do this at Rupp
Yeah.
in a year in which Big Blue Nation right now is revitalized and kind of has a home court advantage back, which I always thought like Rupp's a good home court advantage, but it's not Allen Fieldhouse. It's not Cameron Indoor. It's not a top 5 venue in the country in terms of the home court because it's so big and the fans aren't on top of the players. But I thought this was a huge response by Alabama as much as anything, because this has been a team that, frankly, we thought they were going to be maybe the favorite to win the whole thing before the season started. And they've kind of been a tier 2 team for the most part. And you look at them and you still say, like, they've got all the pieces. They just need to be more consistent. Also with their defense, by the way. Their defense still has a long way to go, just like Kentucky.
It's true. And you got a couple of teams in the SEC that you could say that about. I mean, let's face it. Florida in that Kentucky game, look at the terms that game was played under. And Florida really struggled against Missouri defensively. So, look, the SEC is a monster. And it's because they packaged together all those non-conference results. I mean, it was a historic performance in non-conference. But you and I both know, Jeff, stylistically, you're going to see it from a Tennessee and Ole Miss differently from what you see playing at Kentucky or in Auburn. But this was a testament to the fact, I want to see if you agree or disagree with me on this. If I were to pick 3 teams right now, to make the Final Four, I'm just going to take 3. Auburn would be 1, right?
Yep.
I actually would say Duke would be one of the 3. I don't know if they're 2 or 3. Yep. And a win like this in response is why I would put Alabama as my 3rd, because they went there last year and the talent's there.
You know what it is, too? The difference when I watch these 2 teams, the biggest difference for me is I know at the end of the game for Alabama, you're going to give the ball to Mark Sears and he can make a play, right? Like
here you
go.
You
just feel it. You feel like he's going to either get to the line, again, get an easy shot for a teammate, or be able to score around the basket. I don't know who that is I trust for Kentucky. Like Jackson Robinson, I'm not there. I'm not. Like, I like Owe, but again, I'm not sure he's that guy either. Lamont Butler's been tremendous this season, way better offensively than I thought. But again, I'm not sure I completely trust him, although he can make a play for others. And he's shown the ability, again, to be more effective scoring the ball than he ever did at San Diego State. But none of those guys are Mark Sears, Fana. And while Mark Sears started slow this season, he has been terrific over the last month of the season. And I still trust him because, oh, by the way, he was in the Final Four a year ago. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you. If you're saying to me I can have 3 teams today, I'm going Duke 1. I'm going Duke over Auburn. And I know that may sound bananas, but I just think this Duke team has gotten better and better. And they've got a lot more room to grow because they've got 3 freshmen starting. Auburn, I think, started out at a higher level, right? They had all these guys back. They obviously added some good players. Pettiford looks terrific today, and I still think he's the X factor for them. But to me, Alabama's got Mark Sears, Mark effing Sears, and to me, he's something that not a lot of I'm not sure anybody else has Mark Sears.
No. That's why when you're putting together All-American teams, if you didn't have him on your midseason first team, I can understand that to a degree because of the performances of some others, whether it be.
And he wasn't great early. He was not great early, Fana.
He's still a top 10 player in the country.
I talked to him last week about this, Fana. I talked to him last week, and he said to me, it's taken me time to understand. My role has changed, number one. They don't need me to score nearly as much as they did a year ago. And I'm getting used to playing with some of these other guys. I haven't played with Cliff Amore before. I haven't played with LeBaron before. Darian Reed, who didn't play today. I also thought, in a way, sometimes shortening the rotation makes it better for a team like Alabama, right? They went 8 deep today. They didn't play Aiden Sherrill at all. Darian Reed was hurt. I think sometimes that makes it a little bit easier for Nate Oates and for some of the players to play through some of their mistakes.
It does make you wonder if Mark Pope needs to shorten the rotation.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Crease's injury, and I'm not sure Crease is going to come back. I'm
Really?
not sure where
Really?
Crease comes back.
What's the latest?
I don't know. He was in the boot last week when I saw him still. I mean, he's still a ways away. I could see a scenario where he's done. And I think that hurts him because you got Travis Perry coming off the bench. And you just don't trust Travis Perry in the same way that you do Kirk Risa. And Kirk Risa gives you energy. He gives you some shit to it, right? Some swagger, which this team kind of needs a little bit. They don't play with that fire and that emotion. So I listen, again, if you're Mark Pope right now, you went 9 deep today. And the other thing, they were right there. They were right there against Alabama. It wasn't like they were ever out of the game. If Almanor makes that three from the corner with about, a minute and a half left, a wide open three.
Would have been big.
Could have been different. Yeah. Could have been different.
It's
so
not even
it's not like they were blown out or anything like that. If you're a Kentucky fan, you've still got to be excited and happy where you are, as long as, to me, come NCAA tournament time, you're not bowing out in that first round or really the second round. I think as long as you get to a Sweet 16 and you have this type of regular season, you walk out of this year saying, like, man, we're back. We're back.
Yes, absolutely. You're back.
Yep.
You've got tons of momentum. You've got a coach who on the Gets Us scale has been better than anybody you could have imagined. Yeah. I mean, there's not going to be I will say this, and I think it's the absolute truth. You will not find a person who fits that fan base and that community more than Mark Pope. Yeah. You won't.
Yep.
So that's like already it's exceeded its expectations. You beat Duke, you beat Gonzaga, you've got the right pathway. I think for us, when we're talking about Kentucky, we're not criticizing them for losing to Alabama. The criticism lies in this is a trend where your defense, you're giving up almost 90 points per game in your league. That's something that if you're going to make the second weekend, Jeff, you got to be a little bit better on the defensive end of the floor. And you said it. It'd be one thing if we were coming on here saying like, yeah, they just misjudged. Like they didn't do the personnel correctly. Some of these guys are much better defenders than what they're showing.
I mean, that's the biggest thing for me is I look at it, I'm saying to myself, like, they should be better defensively than they are. I get it. Like, some of their guys aren't great. And Kerr is probably one of the weakest defensive players, and now he's off the court. So, to me, you should be a little bit better. But the way Alabama plays is awfully difficult, especially with the way they push the ball, right? With the way they push the ball, and they've got guys, I feel like almost everybody in their team other than Amori can put on the floor and make plays, right? Filan, Sears, Grant Nelson was doing it in the first half. He was putting on the floor and either getting to the line or getting all the way to the rim. You've got Youngblood, who's only getting better, by the way. That's the other thing. Chris Youngblood has not looked like himself for the first few weeks of his return. But listen, to me, again, Kentucky, you're somewhere in that, I think, ultimately, 8 to 15 range. I think you're somewhere in that range. You played above your head. You won a couple games that were huge, right? At Gonzaga, that Duke game. And I think ultimately, again, this is a team.
Need a good Mississippi State team. They won that game in Stark Vegas.
Yeah. Which was a big one on the road after losing at Georgia. That was a big one for me. To be honest,
huge.
If you had told me I could have one of these two games, either Alabama at home or at Mississippi State, and I'm a Kentucky fan, I'd rather take that road win because I know I'm going to protect my home court. But I want to see if this team can go on the road and win in hostile environments. And I thought that was a big one for them to get down the road. They're going to be a 2, 3, or 4 seed, and it's going to come down to matchups, and it's going to come down to, like you said, can you guard? Can you guard? Do you want to guard? Because if you're not making threes.
Games. Yes.
Right. And if you're not making threes, can you grind out a win? Can you be tough enough to grind out a win in the NCAA tournament if you go, 4 for 20 from 3? Because if not, it's going to be a repeat. And By the way, Fana, we got now 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today, the Kentucky Wildcats and Mark Pope will welcome in John Calipari and Arkansas into Rupp. And I want to get your take on this before we go. We're going to wrap this in a minute. But what do you think? I asked some people what their reaction is going to be when Cal walks onto the court. Do you think he gets an ovation? Do you think they boo him? What do you think happens?
I think if he was humming along, that it would be a really raucous boo. It'd be a really defiant boo. But if I'm a Kentucky fan, I'm so damn glad about the state of my program. Jeff, this might sound comedic, but here's my answer. I'd start laughing. I mean, I'd be chuckling a little bit. I think it's going to be half and half. I don't think this is going to be 20,000 boo birds. I just don't. Because to me, why? You should be glad that he's not your coach anymore. You should be glad that you're where you are. Right. I mean, honestly, should it be a standing ovation, absolute berserk, crazy? I don't think so either. I think you're going to hear a mix, and I think you will get some applause when he comes back. Because to me, him leaving helped your program. Just like when he originally came.
And he's not a threat right now. As you said, he's not a threat today.
I think it might be a little bit of, I think, Jeff, it might be jeers. You know, a little bit of bit of this.
Yeah. Like good riddance. Good riddance. We don't really care that you left now. We got our guy.
Back. Welcome back.
Yeah, that's right. Welcome back. I mean, listen, again, I still think what he did there was he put him on the map after Bully Clyde Gillespie. He got that program back, put him on the map for a long, long time. So, on one sense, I do think they should cheer him. But in the other sense, I don't think they will. It sounds like most people think he's going to get booed out of his mind. And part of it is he comes in the SEC and he's still, while he didn't completely make the decision on his own, he did. He could have stayed another year at Kentucky and tried to turn it. And instead, kind of, they feel like he bailed on him, but they're not upset now. It'll also be interesting to see if John Calipari, what are the odds? Give me your odds. If they lose, if Arkansas loses, give me your percentage that John Calipari shows up for the post-game press conference.
I'm going to say 15%. 85 cents.
That's it?
50. I don't think it's high.
1.5. Wow.
1.5. I think it might be I think he does a hallway thing. I think he does a hallway thing with a couple of reporters. You think he wants to go in that room?
He might run out of that arena. He might sprint out of that arena.
Yeah,
like he did when
because I'd be uncomfortable if I was him. Unless he tries to make it about how, like, you know, he's just a Kentucky guy through and through, which to me, one of the things that's happening this year is he's doing further damage to himself because he hasn't embraced Arkansas through and through.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree, but he really didn't embrace Kentucky the last however many years either and go out in the community. But you're right. He needed to do that with Arkansas with all the money that he was given for NIL and with a fresh start. But, you know, again, when you get to be 65 years old, whatever he is, I just don't think he feels like he needs to do that anymore and be, you know, the used car salesman that he was when he got to Kentucky.
Right. It's a fascinating storyline, but I don't think there's a high. I mean, what do you think are the percent chances that he shows up to that presser? I'm going low, man.
I would hope he's smart enough, even if he loses, to kind of take the high road and use it as something where he can say, now we know his messaging. Whatever question is asked, he will put out whatever his message he wants it to be, and it will be, you know, rattling off all he had done at Kentucky. He will use that. He will use that as an avenue to actually rattle off the Final Fours and all the pros and the money that the pros are making. That's what he'll do.
Might depend on the game. Might depend on how the game goes. If he gets run off the floor, he might be less ideal to the situation. Here's what I do know. After dark tonight at 11 o'clock is going to be wild. I mean, we are going to have a night. UConn falls to Creighton. The Huskies' 28-game home winning streak is snapped. And if you are Greg McDermott, you might just punch your ticket. Like, forget about the bubble. You've got wins over Kansas and UConn. Now we're going to get to that. Houston wins just shy of the buzzer against UCF. Auburn and Georgia. Auburn's up 8 right now with 5 minutes to go. Xavier's up on Marquette early. That's a huge game for Sean Miller. The point, things are going down. I mean, right now in this sport, if you wait until March to follow the sport, you're definitely not watching this, but we will pray for you because we'll see you tonight at 11 o'clock. And when we do, Bobby Dalster's going to have all his takes. Jeff's going to have his takes, and I'll be ready to hear them.
Hey, how did UConn do? Anybody want to find out where Bobby Dalster is right now with the Huskies losing? Where is he? Nowhere to be found. He was supposed to be on with us, Vanna, but UConn loses, and Bobby might be stuck in a dark room right now like Dan Hurley.
Here's all I know. Connecticut made the Big East some money today by giving Creighton winning that ball game in a big way. We're going to talk about that much more because I want to get these thoughts tonight. What we're seeing right now is the chaos that January and February bring. Yeah. And if you wait, again, if you're not following it now, like, this is such a fun time of year, and we'll see you tonight at 11 o'clock. And keep it locked at the Field of 68 all day. Trevor Valise, Dagan Hughes, our entire crew are producing content off the wall. So if you're like, oh, I like this, folks, just keep watching the platforms all day long because we're going to have you covered. For Jeff, I'm John. We'll see you later. 11 o'clock after dark.